Okay, so we're back and we're still talking track and field, the SportsMax Zone continuing here, the story of or build up to the delayed 2020 Olympic Games set to get on the way on the 23rd of July. Now, earlier on Wednesday, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, partially upheld the decision of World Athletics Disciplinary Tribunal to ban the 400-meter world champion Salwa Eid Naser for 2 years starting today. The ruling means Naser, who was born in Nigeria but competes for Bahrain, will miss this summer's Olympics. In the ruling, this is what CAS said. Ms. Salwa Eid Naser is sanctioned with a period of ineligibility for 2 years, commencing on the date of notification of this award, with credit given for the period of provisional suspension already served between the 4th of June 2020 and the 14th October 2020. Naser will also have to pay about $5,000 to World Athletics and to the World Anti-Doping Agency as a contribution toward the administration cost of proceeding with the arbitration. Now, the 23-year-old was charged with 4 alleged whereabouts failures by the Athletics Integrity Unit in June of 2020. Her attorneys have expressed concern about how CAS handled the matter, and joining us is a member of her legal team, Gayle. Matthew, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Huge disappointment here for Naser, I am sure. What is the main point of disappointment for the legal team representing her at the moment, given CAS's ruling today?
Thank you for having me. We really appreciate being invited to join you on your show. Yes, you're right. It's absolutely devastating result for the athlete. Obviously, not being able to take part in the Olympics is going to be a major blow. It's a major blow to this young lady, and no doubt to the country that she represents. Of concern to us, I mean, there are a number of items of concern. This whole appeal turned on the reasonableness or unreasonableness of the test which took place on the 12th of April, 2019. In the first instance hearing, the panel held, and this is the distinguished panel of London QCs, chaired by London QC, that held that the doping control officer that went or said he went to a premises lied in his testimony, right? He lied in his testimony, and in a really absurd way, that was overturned on appeal. So that's a first and quite a considerable concern. I mean,
yeah, Matthew, how did he lie in the testimony?
Well, so it is clear, and it was clear in the documentary evidence, that he went to the wrong address. And he knocked on what was, in effect, a cupboard door. And that's accepted, was accepted by the panel's evidence. And even if you read it in the judgment that was handed down today, and of course I've got to go into it in detail, but they don't even say that he didn't knock on this cupboard door. He was knocking on a cupboard door, according to his evidence, for an hour, when in fact he knew the correct address. And so it really turned over. How reasonable is it for you to knock on a cupboard door and say, well, look, I thought I'd find an athlete in this cupboard, when, quite frankly, they knew she lived in the apartment that was right next door. So that's a concern. That charge, as it were, was characterized as a whereabouts failure. On appeal, they've said that actually, it was okay to recharacterize this charge. How many years after the fact? How long after she's had to go through these quite taxing proceedings and proceedings that have been damaging to her mental health, which is a third issue.
Right.
Sorry, Mariah.
No, I was just agreeing. I'm listening to what you're saying, yeah.
Right. Yes, and then they've recharacterized it now, or said it was okay to recharacterize it as a filing failure, which of course reeks of unfairness. So that's a second issue. And the third issue, which was really quite surprising, is that the panel has said, they accept that this is a young lady who has severe, there was expert testimony from academics on the issue from the United States, expert testimony is accepted that she has severe learning difficulties. That's compounding just quite frankly how unfair these proceedings were, added to the delay. And there's some quite interesting things. I mean, as I said, this is a very large judgment, quite a bit to digest. But this panel has held that the owner of the building, who has no interest per se in Ms. Naser's career or no financial interest at all. He just came and said whatever he was told to say. Well, quite clearly, if they had listened to his evidence, and one has to wonder, I mean, he was aided by an Arabic translator. He is a Bahraini national of some years, and he had some difficulty understanding the proceedings, the following proceedings. And for them to say that this gentleman just came and lied for no good reason, I mean, I was quite surprised to see that kind of disregard for what was a completely independent witness. So they've got that disregard for this gentleman who were a Bahraini national, who I said was an independent witness. They just disregarded that. I mean, the evidence was that the door to the building was open and was open at all times. That was accepted at first instance. That's what the owner came and said, and they just said, no, we brushed it aside. And really, it was quite a sad day for Ms. Naser. One has to wonder, and without making any allegations or casting aspersions on anyone, but one has to wonder what type of athlete and the origins and the backgrounds of the athletes that would get this type of treatment. And all the witnesses and so on were all of a particular.
And of course, based on the document that we received, there's a part that says, 183, in light of the foregoing, the panel majority finds that WADA has the right to re-characterize the charge against an athlete of appeal level, provided that it does not exceed the scope of the first instance decision and that the athlete's defense is not prejudiced. Can you break that down for us, and for the regular public? Because of course, based on what has happened this morning, people have more questions than answers right now.
Yeah, and quite frankly, so do we. This is a truly extraordinary statement for a court to make. And it is notable, though, while it comes down in quite definitive terms, it was a majority decision, which doesn't, and so clearly the panel was not in agreement as to the outcome. But they're basically saying, well, look, you have been charged with one thing, having mounted a defense on the basis that you were charged with X offense, that, well, now we're going to change it to Y. And I guess what they're saying here is what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, well, provided the defense that you used would sort of generally cover both, then that's okay. But that's not okay. Quite clearly, I mean, and it's been clear since the beginning of this defense that we have challenged the fact that the doping control officer went and knocked on this cupboard door. That was clearly not a reasonable thing to do. That was clearly not right to penalize Ms. Naser for this gentleman knocking on the cupboard door. They knew the correct address. They went to the wrong address and knocked on a cupboard door. How could it not be prejudicial to change the charge on appeal? It's outrageous. It's an outrageous statement.
But Matthew, based on what I'm getting from you, it's as if they know exactly what they were doing. Is that what you're trying to say to us? That they deliberately, because isn't it that when you are doing these exercises, you'd call the athlete and see if they're home, call them. If you're saying they're knocking on the door for an hour, aren't you going to call the athlete, or is it that you're just going to stand there and continue knocking?
Well, I think it's clear that there were some public relations issues, and quite frankly, I think that Ms. Naser perhaps managed her reaction to the allegations in a way that perhaps could have been better managed, and maybe she didn't win friends and influence people by the way that she responded. But at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is a young lady who has learning disabilities. and the panel's accepted that. We're dealing with a young lady who has been living away from her native lands and has been in Bahrain and training at a high level for a number of years. I think in the circumstance, on the pressure she was under, I think she's been given a rough ride publicly. I think the panel, but perhaps, I mean, I don't want to say that this panel was swayed by public perception. I don't want to even believe that. I don't want to believe that. But it's remarkable that these findings were made. I suppose that's all I can say.
Yeah, you focused, Matthew, on the knocking on the cupboard scenario which happened, but she was charged with 4 alleged whereabouts infractions. So it's 4. It's not 1. Maybe that Wade would have been the incontrovertible position that Cass took in the end.
Yeah, but again, each has to rise to the necessary standard. The athlete has to be guilty of 3 within the requisite 12-month period.
Yes.
In this case, the 12th of April was the turning point for both charges. And frankly, on the evidence, the 12th of April 2019 falls. And that was what was found at first instance. And that it really is because the doping control officer in that instance was knocking on a cupboard door. So I think it was right to focus on that. The CAS ruling was quite scathing on the doping authorities for taking so long for prosecuting. Because quite frankly, the 4th one, albeit that you might say it's a cute first mistake, and certainly the panel thought that, but quite frankly, the 4th offence should never have arisen in the circumstance.
Matthew, to wrap the segment, can you talk to us about how your client feels at the moment? Because this happening just weeks before the Olympic Games is suggesting to us that, up to 24 hours ago, she was harboring thoughts of going to Tokyo to represent her country. Is that part of the devastation that she would be feeling now?
Well, as you know, this decision only came in this morning, so we're yet to fully regroup and talk to her and sort of talk through how she is. Quite frankly, though, I think having spent quite a significant amount of time with her over the last few months, it's clear that she would be absolutely devastated. This is clearly not the outcome she was expecting. I think she has been live to the concerns that all of the various panel members, from first instance straight through to the CAS judgment, have had about her conduct, and clearly has taken steps since then to take corrective action. I think she will be very grateful that her hard work and the accomplishments, of a 400-meter world championship, that it will stay on the history books. I mean, she must be grateful that accomplishment will stand. She's still very young. She's still very determined to excel at her discipline. I would hope that she will sort of find the mental fortitude to see her way through it. But I mean, obviously, this is going to be an absolutely devastating blow to her and to her family and friends and supporters.
Matthew Gayle, thanks for talking to us on the SportsMax Zone.
Thank you.
Yeah, huge disappointment for the reigning world champion over 400 meters, Naser, officially banned for 2 years today and will, without question, miss the Olympic Games. So a huge disappointment for this Nigeria-born athlete, Mariah, who's been representing Bahrain with distinction and certainly on performance and quality and back class. Would have been one of the favorites for the Tokyo gold medal.
Definitely, and now I have to pull for names to see who will challenge in that event. And Lance, I think what stands out the most for the athlete is the fact that it's just next month. So, she would have been training and almost ready to participate. So to get such news this morning, a blow to her.
Christine Mboma, the Namibian 18-year-old, ran 48.54 today.
So this is her event now.
So and that, based on that performance, certainly makes her a gold medal
Top
candidate,
contender.
gold medal favorite for Tokyo. So a lot of things happening in track and field at the moment. We go to break. Still a lot more to come on the zone.